Hey Psychonauts. Today we're going to talk about bad trips. This is a topic that a lot of you have wanted me to talk about for quite some time, and I figure today's the day to do it. We're going to talk about the dark side of tripping. So I'll share with you some of my experiences with bad trips and just we'll have a discussion overall about the bad trip experience. I mean, what is it, okay? So, first category that I want to divide bad trips into is internal bad trips and external bad trips. Okay, let's start with external because I have definitely had trips in which the external environment caused me to have a bad experience. Now, I can't go into too much detail about the specific experiences I've had, but these have all been with other people around and just a really negative environment. I've had, anything that involves like people yelling or people getting like, there being like an angry, I don't know. If it feels like there's like some type of like altercation happening, just anything that would make a situation uncomfortable without any substances. I mean, it's just going to make it that much more uncomfortable if you're in a trip. So, I mean, this is the importance of set and setting, specifically the setting part of the trip. So, I have had bad experiences just because of my external environment. I haven't really had too many of those recently. I've kind of learned a little bit better to manage my environment and be careful where I trip. But I have had that. So, let's move on to the internal bad trips. Now, I have had some internal bad trips. Now, my overall theory about bad trips, I'm kind of the type that's like, there's no such thing as bad trips. And I think that this can be true to an extent. I don't have this like fear of having some sort of random bad trip. I think there's this idea sometimes that people get that if you have enough trips, like one of them is just, this is going to be a bad trip. And I don't know. I don't think it really works like that. I think you have the power to guide your trip. And here comes my cat. There can be the internal. This is the set part of set and setting. I don't know. I'm not really afraid of bad trips in that way. I definitely think that there's some truth to if you trip enough, you're eventually going to have a challenging experience, or you're going to have an uncomfortable experience, or you're going to have a very humbling experience. And these can all be seen as bad trips. But I think it really comes down to like what you take away from it. I've never had a trip, even my challenging ones, I've never had a trip where I've walked away from it and been like, that was a bad trip. I don't want to do that again. Okay. So let me tell you about some specific experiences, and I really want to start with DMT because I think DMT is kind of its own category in terms of bad trips. It doesn't last very long, so a lot of people think that that's a good thing for avoiding bad trips just because of its short duration, but I'm going to tell you my experience that I had with DMT panic, which is something other people have experienced too, and DMT was honestly the first psychedelic where I really intensely felt that bad trip feeling. And that bad trip feeling to me is, oh my God, what have I done? I need this to stop. Like, this is infinite. I need this to stop. Like, I want out. That's the bad trip feeling, I think, is that when you start to fight it and I want out of this. I've had that with DMT. In my early DMT days, I had this experience where I would take DMT and then I would panic. It's really hard to describe it. It almost felt like an automatic response. Just to the complete overload, and I don't know. There's really no words to describe DMT. The intensity of DMT used to make me sort of go into this panic, and then once that happened the first time, it kind of produced this effect where I was scared to do it again. I wasn't scared of the trip, I was scared of my response to the trip. I don't know if any of you can relate to that, but the experience of DMT panic. So I've definitely had some DMT experiences where I got like a little overly scared, and maybe those could be considered some bad trips. I've definitely also had some DMT trips with like more sinister vibes. It's happened a few times. Most of the time it doesn't happen, but has happened. Speaking of vibes though, Let's talk about LSD and mushrooms because I haven't had any like explicitly bad trips on either of these, but I'm gonna talk to you about some of the things that could feel like a bad trip. I don't know. Let's start with mushrooms. I think the bad trip feeling I get with mushrooms, a lot of times my uncomfortable experiences are due to like nausea, due to vomiting, spending a lot of time in the bathroom with stomach. Like it's not fun. No one likes to throw up, and it's not a pleasant experience. So that can kind of feel like a bad trip depending on your perspective. A lot of times I gain a lot of value from these purging type experiences. But another thing with mushrooms, I can sometimes get like a more creepy, like a creepy vibe, like kind of like my brain is being invaded with something, and it's a little bit, I don't know, it's a little creepy, it's a little like unsettling. I sometimes get that vibe on mushrooms, and I don't typically get that with LSD. So something specific to mushrooms that kind of feels like a little bit of a bad trip if I let myself get too hung up on it. Okay, let's talk about LSD. So I think LSD can produce the more classic bad trip experience. And the flavor of an LSD bad trip always is the flavor of insanity or psychosis, at least in my experience. I've definitely had trips on LSD where I get to the point that it's like, I'm completely insane. This is insanity. And like, why do I keep doing this? And I don't know. I've never, again, no, like, I've never, there's no experience that I can look back on and say, that was a bad trip. I don't know. I think I can understand how people have bad trips. Like, it's understandable to me. Um, I don't know, even in those moments where things don't feel right, or maybe you feel like you're gonna die. I've definitely had that acid feeling where it's like, no, I'm dying right now. And that can definitely send you into a bad trip spiral if you don't know how to guide yourself through the experience. Yeah, these things should definitely be taken seriously. Typically, my advice for avoiding bad trips is just being prepared, being intentional about your experiences. For me, I always remind myself that I know how to navigate these experiences. Like, I don't mean that in like an overconfident sense, or, obviously I'm aware that I can still be humbled significantly. Uh, but there's also a knowing that I know how to navigate. I've given myself the tools I need to navigate these experiences. So make sure you have given yourself the tools that you need to navigate these states of consciousness, or you might have a bad time. Um, yeah, I don't really know how much more I have to say about bad trips. But feel free to use this video to ask me any questions you have about bad trips. I'm definitely willing to answer as many as I can. And I'm just going to end this video. I hope you have a wonderful day today, and you'll see me next time.